Yeah, that's right. So we're going to see where even the disciples get sideways a little bit about the bread. Jesus rebukes them a little bit and says, look, you're not getting it. You're not getting it. And you have eyes and you're seeing, but you're still not getting it. And I get it. I know sometimes people tell me, like in the computer world, the IT guy tells me 5 or 6 times. And he's probably thinking, I don't know why you don't get this. Well, just keep teaching me. And they do. So I get it. The disciples were, every miracle was something new, and they just were astonished, right? He can control the wind and the waves. He can produce food. Okay, so Jesus feeds 5,000. How many times does he do this? Once or twice? Twice. So this other time he feeds 4,000. So a lot of people that are trying to deny the Bible will say there's mistakes made, and they try to figure out how to prove that, and it's just not provable. So we're going to look at that. We'll look at where Jesus feeds the 5,000 and the 4,000, and why. I never knew the why until I studied this lesson. So not maybe just the why, but some differences. All right, so we'll go to John chapter 6, and we'll read the story. The lesson tells us to read the whole chapter. John chapter 6. Another interesting fact about this story is this is the only miracle that's told in all 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So we're going to look at that quite a bit and pick up some differences. John chapter 6. We're going to read through 14, 1 through 14. There's more later, but who would like to read John chapter 6, 1 through 14? Jennifer, you going to bail him out? Well, you got David back there. He can help too. Yeah, John chapter 6, 1 through 14. That's what Jesus said. Woman? Okay, thank you, Patrick. We're going to read this a couple times in different Gospels, just kind of get a different mix and bring out some points. But first of all, so Jesus is there, and he's claiming the good news that the Messiah has come. So he's demonstrating here in this miracle, which is different than the other miracles. So let's talk about the other miracles he's performed. Jesus has power over what? So we say nature. We learned about the wind and the seas. He has power over what else? So we've been life and death. So he raised 3 people from the dead. Who were they? Anybody want to take a shot at that? Lazarus, come forth. Yeah, so Jairus' daughter, and he healed or raised her from the dead, and didn't even. He went to go see her, and they said, he said, no, she's not dead, she's sleeping. And then the widow's son, when they were carrying the casket out the gates, Jesus just touched the coffin, and this young man raised from the dead. So Jesus raised 3 people from the dead. Those 3. Good. All right. So what else does Jesus have power over? He healed sick, raised from the dead, power over nature, wind. What else? What else did he do? What's that? I don't know. How about the demons? Did he remove demons? Yes. All right. I don't know. That's a tough one. You better ask the preacher that one. Yeah. So Jesus, you're right. So Jesus knew the future. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good. You answered your own question. Good. Thank you. So here now, this is a little bit different miracle. Jesus is now going to turn some food into thousands of baskets of food because we're feeding 5,000. Now, we always hear this, right? Jesus is going to feed the 5,000 plus who? Plus who? Huh? And the women and children. So most commentaries say we're around 20,000 people. So this is really a big event. All right. That's correct. So we're going to prove that out, except one, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, 2 of them. Let's just go there now. That's a good question. All right, let's go to Matthew 14:13. Matthew 14:13. We'll be jumping around in these 4 Gospels, which is good. You're probably thinking, well, why are they different? The different perspectives. It's told by different authors. Uh, 14:13 took a little trip. Okay, so go to read 21, Patrick. 14:21. Well, yeah, well, all right, let's start there then. I was going to cut to the chase, but go ahead. No, 13's fine. Let's go ahead and read it from Matthew's viewpoint. Sorry. Okay. Listen. I won't do it again. Matthew 14:13. Okay, so two of the Gospels mention that, yes, there was women and children there. Those 5,000 men plus women and children. So I'm just giving you some little points that, because people are going to argue and try to take things out. And, well, okay, well, maybe you just didn't look. So let's stay here, Matthew, because there's some good stuff here I want to bring out. First is that we see that Jesus has compassion. And we've seen this before. Now, I want you to think about this, at least the way I thought about it when I was studying this lesson. So Jesus is seeing, and we'll see in other scriptures where they're like sheep without a shepherd. And here the people are coming. They're coming for curiosity. They're coming to be healed. They're coming to see a show. Not all of them. I don't know how many. But many are coming just to, yeah. And you know, so my point is, Jesus is feeling the burden of what they're going to miss. He's there to give them bread of life. Not bread to feed you now. Yes, there's some bread now. This will feed you now, but you're missing the whole boat. You're missing the whole picture. I need you to get this, because you're not going to always be in front of me, and the time is coming. So I'm just thinking about how Jesus' heart, it says he had compassion, and I can see where all this compassion is. And we should have the same compassion when we witness and over and over again, just like Jesus did. All right, so that's the first thing I see I think is important. So Jesus was moved, not just so he could feed them, but he's hoping they're going to get what they see and hear. Even the disciples are going to miss this to a degree, and I'll show that to you. All right, so then it says 15, when it was even, and his disciples said, "This is a deserted place. Let's send them away so they could go eat." What the disciples are saying, look, hey, Houston, we got a problem. We ain't feeding all these folks. We need to get them out of here. You ever had company at your house and you kind of like want to get them out? You don't want them to stay the night or something? Or you don't want them, are you trying to eat supper? Hey, you got to go. I got to eat. That's what the disciples were thinking. And Jesus is not too happy about that. So in the different Gospels, he takes, I don't know what's exactly true, but these different four authors, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, give us a glimpse on what Jesus is thinking. And what does he say here? 8:16. What does he say, Patrick? What does Jesus say in 16? You need to give them something to eat. How about thinking about not yourself, but how about thinking about them for a second? They're missing it. 17, he says, we have, but then they said, we only have 5 and so forth, some fish. Jesus says, bring it to them. Then he told them in 19 to sit down. And this part I like. Let's read 19. Then he commanded the multitudes to sit down on the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples, and then the disciples gave it to the multitudes. Interesting point here. So first thing to do, Jesus is going to bless the food. Why? Why is Jesus blessing the food? He's the one doing the miracle. Or is it God? He looked up to heaven and blessed the food. So there's a good lesson here. Jesus is again showing that, this is a big event and something big's fixing to happen. And it's God is going to provide the provision. And I think that's why we bless our food now. At least that's the way I do. And a couple, 3 or 4 years ago, I decided if I eat, I'm going to bless it. I don't care if I'm in the kitchen by myself or if I'm in a restaurant. And a lot of us do that. Yeah, I think so. That's right. Exactly right. I believe that. Okay. Good point. Yeah. Well, with 4 kids, she needed blessings with 4 kids, especially Rusty. Maybe Sharon. I don't know. Susan. All right. Okay, let's we covered that. So in John, we read that Jesus tested Philip. That was Simon's brother, right? Simon Andrew. He said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these?" And he was testing him. So let's go back to John chapter 6, where our lesson is. John chapter 6. We'll start in verse 4. Now the Passover feast of the Jews was near. Then Jesus lifted up his eyes, and seeing a great multitude coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread that these may eat?" Yep, that's correct. Verse 6, but this he said to test him, for himself knew what he would do. Verse 7, Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little. So, 1 denarii, if I'm pronouncing it right, is a day's wage. So whatever you make a day, say $200 a day. So here, he's saying 200. So this is about 8 months of someone's money, their wages, is what Philip was saying is going to cost to feed these, and it still won't be enough, probably, just a little bit. But then one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon, Peter's brother, said to him, "There's a lad who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish, but what are they among so many?" So even, Andrew's missing a little bit. Then Jesus in verse 10 tells him to sit down. Okay. So at least here, Andrew speaks up. So he's getting a little bit of a glimpse of, yes, maybe we can. Something can happen. So Jesus says, let's everybody sit down. Let's get this thing going. And then Jesus gives thanks. All right. 6:12. Let's go there. John 6:12. Go down to 12. So when they were filled, he said to the disciples, "Gather up the fragments that remain so that nothing is lost." Let's just stop there. Why is that there for us? Is that just, hey, we got to do a little housekeeping, let's don't leave it for the squirrels? That's exactly right. So they said that everyone ate their fill and more, and still more was left over. Here's a good lesson on how God is, when He provides for us, He always gives us more than we need. But to Eva's point, we shouldn't be wasteful for the extra He gives us, for the blessing. And maybe we shouldn't be boastful about the blessing either. All right? Verse 13, therefore they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which were left over by those who had eaten. So now we see there was enough bread left over to fill up how many baskets? 12. What does the number 12 represent? And the 12 tribes of Israel. So this wasn't by accident. Now here in this 5,000, we're feeding the primarily the Jews in this area. So that's going to be significant in a minute. Okay. Yes, sir? Okay, so we got about 10 minutes left. Let's look at the 4,000. So let's go to Mark chapter 8. Matthew, Mark. Let's go to Mark 8. So we're going to see that this is after the feeding of the 5,000, sometime later, and now we're feeding primarily the Gentiles. Chapter 8, and I'll read if you're there. In those days, the multitude being very great and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on the multitude because they have now continued with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away hungry to their own houses, they will faint on the way, for some of them have come from afar. Then his disciples answered him, How can one satisfy these people with bread here in the wilderness? He asked them, How many loaves do you have? And they said, 7. So he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves and gave thanks, broke them and gave them to the disciples to set before them. And they set them before the multitude. They also had a few small fish, and having blessed them, he said to them, set them also before them. So they ate and were filled, and they took up 7 large baskets of leftover fragments. Now those who had eaten were about 4,000, and he sent them away. And immediately he got into the boat with the disciples and came to the region of Dalmanutha. That's a big one. Yeah. So here, now, this is representing, it says, it's similar. The commentary is saying now this is, now we're talking to the Gentiles. There's mostly Gentiles here, not the Jews. And it's representing the number 7. We see 7 a lot, right, in the Bible. And one of this 7 is the symbolizing the completeness of the nations, which is kind of complicated. But I just really want to point out that there's 2 big feedings. One's for the Jews and one for the Gentiles. And now I want to go on and see and show you where the disciples are still not quite getting it, but he wants them to get it. So let's keep going. I'm going to start in 11. Mark 6:11. Here the Pharisees are seeking a sign. They're trying to trick Jesus, but the disciples are going to get rebuked here in a minute. Let's see. Then the Pharisees came out and began to dispute with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven, testing him. In other words, they're trying to test him over and over and over again and try to flip the script somehow. But he sighed deeply in his spirit, and he said, Why does this generation seek a sign? Surely I say to you, no sign shall be given to this generation. And he left them, and getting into the boat again, departed to the other side. Okay, verse 14. The disciples do not understand. 14. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread, and they did not have more than 1 loaf with them in the boat. So let's just stop there. So the disciples, now they're getting in the boat, and they only took 1 loaf with them, and now they're kind of telling Jesus, look, I don't know why we didn't bring all the provisions we needed. We only have 1 loaf, and there's quite and John eats a lot, probably. He said something like that. Let's see what he says, 15. Then he charged them, saying, Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, is it because we have no bread? So immediately Jesus, he says, look, quit worrying about your stomach just for 1 minute. I need to talk to you about the Pharisees. They're not getting it. And because they're not getting it, you're not getting it. And get off that. He says, you need to beware of the Pharisees. And when you see the word leaven, it says, take heed, beware the leaven of the Pharisees. What he's talking about, the leaven means doctrine. Or in this sense, it means doctrine. In other words, what they believe. And he's warning them against the Pharisees. Then 17, but Jesus, being aware of it, said to them, why do you reason because you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive nor understand? Isn't your heart still hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, you do not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many baskets full of fragments did you take up? They said to him, 12. Also, when I broke the 7 for the 4,000, how many large baskets full of fragments did you take up? And they said, 7. So he said to them, how is it you do not understand? So this is just another proof where all 4 Gospels coincide that we did feed 4,000, we fed 5,000, and kind of the why. I got one little last piece here. Almost out of time. (16:12). Let's look at Matthew 16:12 real quick. And I want to make sure the disciples, they get a break here. They're not all bad. And this is the same story, but it's in Matthew. But it has a different ending. And I wanted you to see that. So let's start in verse 8, 16:8, because we're out of time. But Jesus, being aware of it, said to them, O you of little faith, why do you reason among yourselves because you have brought no bread? Do you not yet understand and remember the 5 loaves or the 5,000 and how many baskets you took up? Nor the 7 loaves to the 4,000 and how many large baskets you took up? How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread, but to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Verse 12. Then they understood that he did not tell them to beware of the leavened bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So they're starting to get it. And I can see why. And I was going to end this story. My dad used to always tell this story about a young lad or young boy that got lost in the woods. And his grandfather had given him a compass, and he wore it around his neck. But his grandfather didn't do a good job of teaching him how to use it. So he was lost in the woods, and he sat on the ground next to a tree, and for many days he fought fear and hunger and sadness when the compass was right there on him all the time, and all he had to do was pull it out and use it. He had the tool, but he didn't know how to use it. So the moral, the lesson that I have is that, we just need to engage our heart. And I'll just read what I said. It's probably better if I read it. It's all about the heart. And first of all, do you want to be right or do you want to be righteous? See, the Pharisees, we learned all throughout these lessons and how early on we learned that they're going to have eyes, they're not going to be able to see. They're going to have ears, but they won't be able to hear. And Jesus is really trying to get the disciples to pick up what is true, and they're picking it up. So the question is, do you want to be right or do you want to be righteous? Well, it's all about the heart. I believe the heart makes the final decision in life. The eyes and the brain, they give us ideas, but I believe the heart makes the final decision, and then that desire is then made. So if we prepare our heart by taking God's Word over and over and over again, our eyes will see God's goodness for us, and our family, then our witness will overflow. So that's the lesson of the 5,000. Any questions or comments? Anybody want to add to that? Well, that was the last lesson. Susie, the new books are out, right? Anybody need a book? I don't know what the first lesson is. I haven't even looked at it, but that'll be next week. We'll spend 2 weeks on it.